You know the routine. You watch the keynotes, highlight the books, and load up on advice about how to grind harder and outwork the competition. But eventually, the math stops making sense. The massive amount of time, money, and emotional energy you invest into getting fired up rarely matches your actual output. You are putting in maximum effort for a marginal performance boost. This graph charts it perfectly. Motivation spikes from inspiration, but 72 hours later, energy crashes to zero. Now, the blue line, representing practical systems, it dips during the learning curve, but climbs permanently. Why doesn't that emotional high translate into structural change? The burnout happens because we are using the wrong operational framework. We are treating motivation like an engine, when in reality, it is only a temporary spark. We often lean on individual mindset to solve complex, systemic problems, treating every hurdle as a personal mental block. This motivational approach is the default for many because it feels rewarding in the moment. Believing that positive thinking will fix your workflow is an easy, low-friction starting point. The alternative is a practical method. This requires trading the easy comfort of a good attitude for the higher friction of actually tracking your behaviors and mapping out your systems. To understand where to invest your effort, we are going to compare these two models side by side. Recognizing the mechanics of these two different lenses is the only way to shift from generating short-term hype to engineering measurable success. The motivational side focuses heavily on inspiration and positive thinking as your primary levers. Because of that focus, its vocabulary relies on slogans, quotes, and binary labels. It categorizes people and efforts as either rich or poor, lazy or ambitious. That language is fast to digest. But if you are trying to diagnose why a specific project failed or a team missed a deadline, these labels offer zero analytical value. The practical side shifts the focus away from feelings and prioritizes the tracking of actual behavior, hard data, and measurable patterns. Your vocabulary upgrades. Instead of calling someone lazy, you start looking at audience segments, behavioral drivers, resource constraints, and operational trade-offs. This is where the friction hits. This method strips away the comfort of simple answers and forces you into the unglamorous work of collecting and analyzing data. If you are trying to fix a real problem, labeling it with a motivational buzzword guaranteed you will miss the structural truth. Next is the core assumption. The motivational side operates on the belief that success is driven almost exclusively by individual mindset. That creates a severe limitation. It completely ignores external context, rigid corporate structures, and the very real resource constraints you face every day. When you ignore reality, you foster a culture of hyper-independence. Individuals start taking the blame for systemic failures, which inevitably leads straight to burnout. The practical side accepts that outcomes are shaped by a mix of context, behavior, and interlocking external systems. By acknowledging how the real world operates, this approach produces highly actionable insights and interventions that actually work. This leads to environmental design. You shift the heavy lifting off of your raw daily willpower and place it onto intelligently designed workflows and surroundings. A broken system will always defeat a positive mindset. You cannot out-hustle bad architecture. Finally, look at the ultimate outcome. Deploying purely motivational tactics gives you a fast, aggressive spike in action, but it cannot scale. Motivation is a depreciating asset. To maintain that baseline of energy across a team or your own life, you have to constantly reapply it. More speeches, more videos, more mental strain. The outcome of the practical side is the ability to make scalable decisions, execute targeted interventions, and achieve measurable impact. It requires genuine patience. Practical systems have a slower, heavier initial liftoff before their compounding effects take over. But while motivation is an exhausting resource you have to refill every morning, practical systems are compounding investments that eventually run themselves. Mindset provides the fuel to get to the starting line, but it lacks the structural logic of a strategy. If you are at absolute zero, day one of a new project or a new career, motivation is a perfectly valid tool to help you overcome initial inertia and fear. But that spark has a strict expiration date. Relying on it past week one is a severe liability. If you are managing a team or breaking a performance plateau, you must pivot exclusively to data. When you confuse these two phases, when you try to inspire your way out of a logistical bottleneck, you stall out. Stop trying to permanently sustain your career on the fleeting, exhausting spark of daily motivation. Instead, embrace the higher friction work. Track your data, identify your real constraints, and map out structural systems that solve the root cause. Motivation sparks action. Practical thinking sustains results. Look at the people, map the context, gather the data, and build the systems. That is how you make better decisions. Lasting results belong to the person who builds the most efficient engine, rather than the one who stays the most inspired.